quick like and subscribe if you enjoy my content. My name is Garrett. I'm 38 years old, and I work as an operations director for Summit Logistics in Raleigh, North Carolina. I manage supply chain networks across the Southeast, coordinating everything from warehouse distribution to freight routing. It's complex work that requires planning, strategy, and the ability to see 3 moves ahead. Skills that turned out to be very useful when my wife decided to destroy our marriage. I met Andrea 9 years ago at a friend's wedding in Asheville. She was working as a marketing manager for a tech startup, and I was already established in logistics. We connected immediately. She was creative where I was analytical, spontaneous where I was methodical. We balanced each other perfectly, or so I thought. We got married 2 years later, bought a house in North Hills, the kind of place with good schools for the kids we talked about having someday. For the first 5 years, everything worked. We both had careers, we traveled, we built a life together. Then about 2 years ago, things started shifting. Andrea joined a new gym, Core Fit Athletics, an upscale place in downtown Raleigh with personal trainers, group classes, and a juice bar that charged $14 for smoothies. She went 3 times a week at first, then 5 times. Then she was there every day. I'm really getting into fitness, she'd say, coming home energized and glowing. It makes me feel alive. I was happy for her. Everyone needs hobbies, passions outside of work and marriage. But then the late night started. The gym is hosting a networking event tonight, she'd say. Or, some of us are grabbing dinner after our training session. Or, there's a weekend wellness retreat in the mountains. I really think it will be good for me. I started noticing her phone habits change. She'd take it everywhere, to the bathroom, to the kitchen, even just to walk to the mailbox. She'd angle it away from me when texting. She'd smile at messages she wouldn't share. Who are you texting? I'd ask. Just people from the gym, planning our next group workout. The distance between us grew wider. Conversations became surface level. Sex became rare, then stopped entirely. She was physically present but emotionally absent, like she was waiting for something. About 4 months ago, I suggested marriage counseling. We're drifting apart, I said one evening. I think we need help reconnecting. Andrea looked surprised. You think we need therapy? I think we need to talk to someone before this gets worse. She considered it. Okay, if you think it'll help. You'll actually go? Of course. I want to fix this too. That should have been my first warning sign. She agreed too easily. No resistance, no defensiveness, just immediate acceptance. I should have questioned why. I found a therapist through my company's employee assistance program. His name was Dr. Richard Morrison, and he specialized in couples counseling and relationship dynamics. His bio said he had over 20 years of experience helping couples navigate difficult transitions. I booked our first appointment for a Thursday evening, 3 weeks out. Dr. Morrison has great reviews, I told Andrea. I think he can really help us. I'm sure he will, she said, not looking up from her phone. The 3 weeks passed slowly. Andrea's behavior didn't change. More gym time, more late nights, more distance. But I told myself once we got into therapy, once we had a professional helping us communicate, things would improve. I was so focused on saving my marriage that I didn't see what was really happening. The Thursday of our first appointment arrived. I left work early, drove home to pick up Andrea. She was in the bedroom getting ready, wearing more makeup than usual for a therapy session. You look nice, I said. I came straight from the gym, had to shower and change. Ready to go. Actually, I'm going to drive myself. I have something after, and I'll be coming from a different direction. Something after therapy? We should probably talk after the session, process what we discussed. It's just coffee with a friend. I'll be quick. Another warning sign I ignored. I drove to Dr. Morrison's office alone. It was in a professional building off Glenwood Avenue, quiet and discreet. The waiting room was empty when I arrived. I checked in with the receptionist. Garrett Chun, 6 p.m. appointment. Yes, Mr. Chun. Dr. Morrison is just finishing with his previous client. Your wife hasn't arrived yet. She's driving separately. Should be here any minute. I sat down and waited. Scrolled through my phone. Answered a few work emails. At 6:05, Andrea still hadn't shown. At 6:08, the door to Dr. Morrison's office opened. A middle-aged couple walked out, looking exhausted but relieved. Dr. Morrison followed them, shaking their hands. Then he turned to me. Mr. Chun, come on in. We'll give your wife a few more minutes. I followed him into his office. It was exactly what you'd expect. Comfortable chairs, soft lighting, a bookshelf full of psychology texts, a box of tissues on the side table. Dr. Morrison was in his early 50s, salt and pepper hair, kind eyes, the sort of person who immediately put you at ease. So, Garrett. May I call you Garrett? Of course. Tell me a bit about what brings you and Andrea here today. I started explaining. The distance, the communication breakdown, the feeling that we were becoming roommates instead of partners. Dr. Morrison listened, taking occasional notes. At 6:12, there was a knock on the door. That must be Andrea, Dr. Morrison said. Come in. The door opened. Andrea walked in, smiling apologetically. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was terrible. No problem, Dr. Morrison said. Please have a seat. Andrea sat in the chair next to mine. That's when I noticed she smelled different. Not like her usual perfume. Something masculine. Cologne. And she was wearing a new necklace I'd never seen before. So, Dr. Morrison said, settling back into his chair. Andrea, Garrett was just telling me a bit about the challenges you've been facing as a couple. Would you like to add anything from your perspective? Andrea shifted in her seat. Well, I think we've just grown apart. We want different things. We've become different people. Can you elaborate on that? Garrett is very focused on work, on routine, on planning everything. I need more spontaneity, more excitement, more passion. I felt something twist in my chest. She never said any of this to me directly. And have you communicated these needs to Garrett? Dr. Morrison asked. I've tried, but he doesn't really hear me. That's not fair, I said. I'm here, aren't I? I'm the one who suggested therapy. You suggested therapy because you want to fix me. Like I'm a problem that needs solving. I want to fix us. There's a difference. Dr. Morrison held up a hand. Let's slow down. This defensiveness is common in couples who haven't been communicating effectively. Andrea, can you give me a specific example of a time you tried to express your needs and felt unheard? Andrea thought for a moment. Last month, I told Garrett I wanted to take a weekend trip. Just us, reconnecting. He said he had work commitments and couldn't get away. That was technically true. I'd had a major client presentation that Monday and needed the weekend to prepare. But you didn't suggest an alternative weekend, Andrea continued. You just shut down the idea entirely. Because I had work. You always have work, Garrett. Work is your excuse for everything. Dr. Morrison made a note. It sounds like there's some resentment building. Andrea, do you feel Garrett prioritizes work over your relationship? Yes, absolutely. And Garrett, do you feel that's a fair assessment? I opened my mouth to defend myself, but Dr. Morrison's calm gaze made me pause and actually consider it. I work hard because I'm building a future for us, I said slowly. But maybe I've been prioritizing work more than I should. That's a good insight, Dr. Morrison said. Self-awareness is the first step. We talked for another 20 minutes about communication patterns, about unmet needs, about the different ways people express and receive love. It was actually helpful. I was starting to feel like maybe therapy could work, that maybe we could rebuild what we'd lost. Then Dr. Morrison said something that changed everything. I'd like to try an exercise. It's called radical honesty. The idea is that you both share something you've been holding back, something you're afraid to say. Complete transparency, no judgment. Andrea, would you like to start? Andrea glanced at me, then back at Dr. Morrison. Okay. I've been feeling disconnected from Garrett for a long time, and I've found that connection elsewhere. My stomach dropped. Can you elaborate? Dr. Morrison asked gently. There's someone at my gym. His name is Kyle. We've gotten close. Really close. The room felt like it was tilting. How close? I managed to ask. Andrea looked at me directly for the first time since she'd arrived. We've been seeing each other for about 4 months. For months. A third of a year. While I've been working late, while I've been planning our future, she'd been with someone else. Are you saying you're having an affair? Dr. Morrison asked. I'm saying I've found someone who makes me feel alive again. Someone who prioritizes me. Someone who... There was another knock on the door. We all turned. I'm sorry, the receptionist said, poking her head in. Dr. Morrison, there's a Kyle Brennan here? He says he's part of the 6 p.m. session. Everything stopped. I looked at Andrea. Her face had gone pale. You brought him. I said. You brought your boyfriend to our marriage counseling session? I thought if we all talked together, you'd understand. Understand what? that you've been cheating on me. Dr. Morrison stood up. I think we need to pause here. Andrea, did you invite this person without informing either me or your husband? I just thought, Kyle and I have been talking about this, and we thought if Garrett could see how good we are together, he'd be willing to let me go without a fight. Let you go. I was on my feet now. We're married, Andrea. You don't get to bring your boyfriend to therapy and ask me to just accept it. The door opened wider. A guy walked in. Mid-30s, athletic build. Exactly what you'd expect from a personal trainer. He had the confidence of someone who thought he'd done nothing wrong. Hey, Kyle said, looking at me. You must be Garrett. Look, man, I know this is weird, but Andrea and I really care about each other. We thought if we all talked like adults. Get out, I said. Garrett, please, Andrea started. Both of you, get out of this office right now. Kyle crossed his arms. I have just as much right to be here as you do. Andrea invited me. That's when Dr. Morrison spoke up. Actually, you don't. His voice had changed. The gentle therapist tone was gone, replaced by something sharper. This is a couples counseling session for Mr. and Mrs. Chun. You weren't scheduled to be here, and your presence is inappropriate. But Andrea said, I don't care what Andrea said. This is my practice, and I'm asking you to leave. Kyle looked at Andrea. She nodded reluctantly. I'll wait in the car, Kyle said. This is bullshit, though. He left. The door clicked shut behind him. Andrea stood up. I should probably go too. Sit down, Dr. Morrison said. It wasn't a request. Andrea sat. I was still standing, too angry to sit, too shocked to process what had just happened. Dr. Morrison looked at Andrea with an expression I couldn't quite read. Mrs. Chun, bringing your affair partner to a marriage counseling session without your husband's knowledge or consent is not only inappropriate, it's manipulative. What were you hoping to accomplish? I thought if we all talked openly. You thought you could ambush your husband into accepting your affair. That's not therapy. That's coercion. Andrea's face flushed. You don't understand our situation. I understand perfectly. You've been having an affair for 4 months. Instead of ending your marriage honestly, you agreed to counseling to buy time, or to somehow legitimize your relationship with this other man. Does that sound accurate? She didn't answer. Dr. Morrison turned to me. Garrett, I need to tell you something, and I need you to stay calm when I do. I sat down slowly. What? I'm not actually a marriage counselor. The room spun. What are you talking about? Your website says. I'm a divorce attorney. Richard Morrison. I've practiced family law in North Carolina for 23 years. I stared at him. You're what? He reached into his desk and pulled out a business card, slid it across to me. Richard Morrison, attorney at law specializing in family law and divorce. Your colleague, David Park, called me 3 weeks ago, Richard said. He's a friend of mine. We play golf together. He told me you were struggling in your marriage and looking for help. He asked if I could do him a favor. David knows you're a divorce attorney? He does. And he suspected your wife might be having an affair based on some things you mentioned. So he asked if I'd be willing to pose as a therapist for 1 session, just to see what came out. My head was spinning. This whole thing was a setup. Not a setup, a test. To see if your wife would be honest in what she thought was a safe space. And she wasn't just honest. She brought her affair partner to try to manipulate you into accepting the situation. I looked at Andrea. She was staring at Richard with her mouth open. You're a divorce attorney? She said. This whole thing was fake. The therapy was fake, Richard said. But everything you said was real. Everything you admitted. And everything that's about to happen next is very real. He pressed a button on his desk. The receptionist opened the door. Send the process server, please. A woman in a professional suit walked in carrying a manila envelope. Andrea Chun, she asked. Andrea nodded, confused. You've been served. She handed Andrea the envelope and walked out. Andrea opened it with shaking hands. Pulled out the papers inside. Petition for divorce. Filed by Garrett Chun. Represented by Richard Morrison, attorney at law. She looked at me, then at Richard, then back at the papers. You already filed for divorce? Before this session, David filed on your behalf 3 days ago, Richard said to me. After you told him your wife was definitely having an affair and you just needed proof. This session was about getting that proof in a controlled environment where she might admit to the affair on the record. On the record? Andrea's voice rose. Are you recording this? Richard gestured to a small camera in the corner of the room. This is my law office, Mrs. Chun. I record all client sessions for documentation purposes. There's a sign in the waiting room informing all visitors. You walked past it when you came in. Andrea looked like she might be sick. You trapped me. You trapped yourself, Richard said calmly. You admitted to a 4-month affair. You brought your affair partner to what you thought was marriage counseling in an attempt to manipulate your husband. All of that is now documented. He turned to me. Garrett, we should discuss next steps in private. Mrs. Chun, you're free to go. Andrea stood on shaky legs. This is insane. This can't be legal. Everything that happened here was completely legal. You voluntarily attended a session at a law office, not a medical office. Attorney-client privilege doesn't apply to you because you're not my client. And North Carolina is a one-party consent state for recordings. I consented to record my own office. So yes, this is entirely legal. Andrea looked at me one more time. Garrett, please. We can still talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice when you started sleeping with Kyle. You made it again when you brought him here. I'm done. She left. I heard her heels clicking down the hallway, heard the outer door close. I sat in silence for a long moment. I can't believe David set this up, I finally said. Richard smiled slightly. David's a good friend. To both of us. He knew you needed proof, and he knew your wife would likely incriminate herself if she thought she was in a safe space. So we gave her that safe space and let her talk. Is the recording actually admissible in North Carolina divorce proceedings? Absolutely. Adultery is still grounds for divorce in this state. And while it doesn't affect property division as much as it used to, it absolutely affects alimony claims. Your wife just admitted to a 4-month affair on camera. That's going to make her alimony case very difficult. She'll fight this. Let her. We have documentation. We have her admission. We have her bringing her affair partner to what she believed was couples therapy. No judge is going to look favorably on that. What happens now? Richard pulled out a legal pad. Now we talk about what you want from this divorce. Assets, property division, timeline. And we build a strategy based on what we learned today. We spent the next hour going through everything. The house we'd bought 6 years ago, currently worth $485,000 with $220,000 left on a mortgage. My retirement accounts. Andrea's smaller retirement account from her marketing job. The cars, the furniture, the life we'd built together. North Carolina is an equitable distribution state, Richard explained. That means assets get divided fairly, not necessarily equally. The affair doesn't directly impact division, but it can be a factor the judge considers. More importantly, it affects alimony. How much has she been making? According to the financial disclosure David helped you prepare, she makes about $72,000 a year. You make $118,000. Normally, that income gap might support a small alimony claim. But adultery is a bar to alimony in North Carolina unless the supporting spouse also committed adultery. I didn't. Then she gets nothing. 0 alimony, 0 post-separation support. She'll get her share of marital assets, and that's it. How long will this take? You have to be separated for 1 year before the divorce can be finalized in North Carolina. But we can work out a separation agreement that handles all the property division, support issues, everything. Once that's signed, you'll just be waiting out the clock. I left Richard's office 2 hours later with a strategy, a timeline, and a recording of my wife admitting to her affair while trying to manipulate me into accepting it. David called me that night. How'd it go? You set me up with a divorce attorney pretending to be a therapist. Did it work? She brought her boyfriend to the session. David was quiet for a moment. She did what? She brought Kyle. Tried to get us all to talk like adults about her affair. Jesus Christ. I knew she was cheating, but I didn't think she'd be that bold. Richard recorded everything. I'm filing for divorce. Good. You deserve better than someone who'd do that to you. How long have you known about the affair? I suspected for about 6 months. I saw her at a restaurant with some guy who definitely wasn't you. They were very close. I didn't want to say anything without proof. So when you mentioned she'd agree to therapy, I called Richard and set this up. Thank you for looking out for me. That's what friends do. The next few weeks were surreal. Andrea moved out immediately, went to stay with Kyle at his apartment. I stayed in the house, surrounded by the life we'd built together. Her attorney, a woman named Patricia something, called Richard within 3 days. My client wants to discuss a settlement. I'm sure she does, Richard said. She's not in a strong position. The affair is irrelevant to property division. but very relevant to alimony, which is what your client was probably counting on. She makes $72,000 to my client's $118,000. Normally, that might support claim. But North Carolina law is clear. Adultery bars alimony. My client denies the affair. Richard laughed. I have her admitting to it on video. In my office. While trying to introduce her affair partner into marriage counseling. Silence on the other end. Send me the video, Patricia finally said. Richard sent it that afternoon. Patricia called back the next day. My client is willing to accept a clean split. Half the house equity, half the marital savings. She keeps her retirement account. He keeps his. No alimony claims from either side. Richard looked at me. I nodded. Acceptable, Richard said. Draw up the agreement. The separation agreement was signed in late November. Clean 50-50 split of assets. The house would be sold, and we'd split the proceeds. No alimony, no support, no ongoing financial entanglement. We'd wait out the 1-year separation period and finalize the divorce next October. The house sold in January. Nice property in a good neighborhood. We cleared about $265,000 after paying off the mortgage and closing costs. I wrote Andrea a check for $132,500 and never spoke to her again. I heard through mutual friends what happened next. Andrea moved in with Kyle permanently. Thought she'd finally found her passionate, spontaneous relationship. It lasted 3 months. Turns out Kyle wasn't interested in a live-in girlfriend who came with baggage and expectations. He liked the affair, the sneaking around, the excitement, the ego boost of stealing another man's wife. He didn't like the reality of an actual relationship with actual responsibilities. He broke up with Andrea in March. Told her she was too intense, too demanding, that he needed space. Andrea ended up moving into a small apartment in Durham, still working her marketing job, still trying to convince mutual friends that the divorce was mutual, that we'd both just grown apart. Nobody who'd seen the therapy session video believed her. As for me, I stayed in Raleigh. Bought a smaller house in a quiet neighborhood. Threw myself into work for a while. David checked in regularly. You doing okay? Better than I thought I'd be. That's because you handled it smart. You got proof. You got documentation. You didn't let emotion drive your decisions. I had a good friend who set me up with a good attorney. Richard's the best. And he loved that therapy session setup. He said it was the most efficient divorce consultation he's ever done. I started dating again about a year after the separation. Nothing serious at first. Just coffee dates, dinners, relearning how to trust. Then I met Rebecca. She was a project manager at a construction firm. Direct, honest, no games. We took it slow. On our 4th date, I told her about Andrea, about the fake therapy session, about Kyle, all of it. Rebecca listened without judgment. Your friend set you up with a divorce attorney pretending to be a therapist? Yeah, that's either brilliant or slightly unethical. I can't decide which. Both, probably. She smiled. Well, it worked. You got out clean. I did. Do you still love her? No, I don't think I ever really knew her. The woman I married wouldn't have brought her boyfriend to couples therapy. Fair point. The divorce was finalized in October, exactly 1 year after the separation. Simple court appearance. Judge signed the papers, done. 9 years of marriage. Ended with a signature. I ran into Andrea one last time about 6 months later. She was at a coffee shop in North Raleigh with some friends. I was there with Rebecca. Andrea saw me. Our eyes met across the room. She looked away first. I turned back to Rebecca and continued our conversation. Because that chapter was closed. Finished. Done. Andrea had brought her boyfriend to our marriage counseling session, thinking she could manipulate me into accepting her affair. Instead, she'd walked into a divorce attorney's office and confessed everything on camera. She trapped herself, and I'd walked away with my dignity, my assets, and, eventually, a relationship built on honesty instead of deception. Sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate schemes or public humiliation. Sometimes it's just being 3 moves ahead. Andrea thought she was going to therapy. She was actually ending her marriage, and she did all the work for me.